Let's see. Okay. So I'd like to call the MWPA Executive Committee meeting of June 2nd to order. Lori, would you please call the roll to make sure we have a quorum?
Yes, thank you. Chair Goings.
Here.
Member Kurtz.
Here.
Member McMillan.
Here.
Member McGinty.
Here.
Member Rodani.
Here.
Thank you. All present.
Thanks so much. Let's move to item 3. Any requests to adjust the order of the agenda? I see none. Let's move to open time for public expression. This time, the public's welcome to address the executive committee on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee. And please be advised that pursuant to government code, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 3 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting and mute your microphone when not reporting out. So any members of the public wish to address the executive committee?
At this time, is there any members that would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Please raise your hand or dial *9 if you're on your phones. I see none at this time.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks all. Let's move to the executive officer report. Mark, you're on.
Good morning, everybody, and I will make this as quick as possible, but I do have some great things to talk about. Recent fires, recent fire weather. As was mentioned by Julie just before we started, we're starting to get a little bit of an initial attack building within the county and also throughout the greater Bay Area, and if not the entire state, which a little ahead of schedule, not hugely ahead of schedule, but a little ahead of schedule. I do want to point out a decision that was made on a 2-alarm structure fire in Mill Valley yesterday that I fully support. And I saw it in the newspaper and I saw it in the dispatch notes. And I think it's a great tactic or decision to make. And that was they issued a shelter in place to the residents nearby. Wow. And that's so important in a situation like this because it allows the ingress of the fire apparatus. And we've had numerous fires where people self-evacuating has caused a traffic jams of people going out and us not being able to get the fire engines going in. And you guys know how our communities are. So that decision from law enforcement there to do the shelter in place was fantastic in my opinion. Looking at the fire weather and looking at appropriately at our fuels. While at our last board meeting, we were just at normal for the time. Now we are at historic lows for the time. So you can see how quickly it's changed. And I think it's really related to the stress of the fuels from so many years of drought. And now CAL FIRE Fire Prevention Grant, besides a small group of people who authored the grant, you guys are the first to hear that we were awarded our $3.25 million grant focused on the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. So within 60 days, we're going to receive the documentation for that, and then we'll process our paperwork, which will include a board resolution accepting it. But that's $3.25 million going towards our Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break over 2.5 years. So that's fantastic news that we're super excited about. Our recruitment for our management analyst, we had it open for 5 days. We received 2 applicants. We are going to move very fast on this. We have interviews with the 2 applicants on Monday of next week. Both applicants appear well matched for the position, so I'm very optimistic about this second recruitment. Did want to mention that one of the things that ESP likes to do that I really love is our field trips that they put together. June 7th, we'll have a field trip to the Citron Bowl, and that's some work that was a combination of MWPA funding and CAL FIRE funding. It's one of the examples that we use. If you remember the first slider picture that we had where you could see the before and after, and you can see the acacia that was removed and the young oaks being able to survive, that's Citron Bowl. So we're going to be having a field trip on June 7th there. I got to say, I think our D-space evaluations are going pretty hot and heavy. If I can use our website hits as an example, we're averaging about 1,000, just under 1,000 visits a month to the D-space page. That is where people access their report from the flyer that, or the door hanger, or the literature that's handed from the evaluator. So 1,000 visits a month or a week is the most we've gotten in a long time. So I really think our evaluators are out there doing a great job getting the word out. Ember Stomp was just a huge success. I had high expectations going into it, and it exceeded my expectations. I know Fire Safe Marin had huge high expectations, and I think it even exceeded theirs. The head count that we're estimating now is 2,400 people attended. And I think that strategy that they created of the music, the food trucks, and attracting children to bring their parents along with them worked great. We heard from many people, they went because of the music, because they had some great bands there. And then they found out that they learned a lot about fire prevention while they were there, or their kids encouraged them to come. So excellent success. And I do want to point out that some of the vendors that were there mentioned to us that they had more sales for their items at this fair related to home hardening, especially, than any other show that they've ever been to. And then I think even more importantly, they said this was the most informed public that they've ever seen at an event like this. So I'm overwhelmed with the success that we had. And then also Fire Safe Marin received actually, I want to call it a nationwide, but there's actually international applicants to this award for the work that they've done on our adaptive wildfire campaign. They got a silver medal, and from the Telly Award, it's a pretty big award for them. And I think Rich is going to expand upon that at our next board meeting. With that, I'll stop the screen share and take any questions from you.
Thanks, Mark. Questions, anyone? Sashi, please.
Was 2,400 people sounds like a great number of people for Ember Stomp. Was there any surveying of that group, capturing of emails, some other way to maintain the connection, and because the whole point is this is a public education event.
Right.
It's not entertainment, so in what way can we make use of that, or can Fire Safe Marin?
Fire Safe Marin did poll and get information from many of the people as they walk across that little land bridge into the area. So they'll have some of that data. We have some of the data as well for the people who had come to our table. We were capturing names, addresses, especially in relation to our grant program. In fact, we've seen a big hit on our website for the grant program after that. But I'll follow up with Rich to see what type of demographic information he got from it.
Julie, please.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, Mark, how was the shelter in place in Mill Valley yesterday communicated to the residents?
I can answer that because I was there. It's my neighborhood, because if anyone wants to, it was, it was just across the hill from me. There were Nixle alerts that were sent out to those of us who weren't in the immediate area, because we could see the smoke and the flames from my house, and my neighbors were coming out and asking, what do you think we should do? And one of my neighbors actually very smartly told everyone, hey, make sure you turn your car around in case you need to get out, which I thought was a nice, simple thing to tell everybody. But they did Nixle alerts, I think primarily, and I believe that they might have done also an Everbridge push out to the people who were in the immediate area. So Mark, you can probably comment on that, but I can tell you that was what the resident experience was like.
Reading the CAD notes, it looked like they did do a focused and custom designed Everbridge zone instead of using the entire zone. So I think it's just an example of great coordination. And then also an opportunity for me to pitch our Pulse Point app that we have that's connected to our dispatch system. It's a free app. The Fire Chiefs Association pays for the subscription, so there's no ads or anything that go along with the app. And you can get up-to-date information on incidents in Marin. In fact, you can sign up for alerts, and literally, and I'm not kidding you, your phone will go off at the same time the bells go off at the fire station. And then, so you can pick what incident type that you want to be alerted for. And then you can see if it's a first alarm, they'll have a little alarm with the 2. If it goes to second alarm, and you'll see the resources that are assigned to it, and an address and then you can pull up a map. And then the other app resource for situational awareness is alertwildfire.org/North Bay. and you'll see the cameras that we have that are available. 10 cameras in Marin, which we do and have in plans to increase the number of cameras, but I have a feeling, I didn't have a chance to look. I was umpiring the game during that fire, so I can't really pull my phone out, but I have a feeling the Tam East camera was zoomed in on that fire, probably had great footage of it.
When you say Everbridge, you mean Alert Marin, don't you?
Alert Marin, correct.
Okay. And a couple other questions. It seems like it's been more windy in Marin lately than it has been in the past. And I would assume that that's contributing to the fuels drying out more rapidly.
Correct, ×2.
Okay, good. And then
Anecdotally,
lastly,
I think it's been windier too.
What?
Anecdotally, I'd say it's been windier too, just based on experience.
Yeah. And then the last thing I just wanted to say was we had a lot of Marin Master Gardeners staffing the demonstration garden. And we got a lot of accolades. It was a lot of fun. And I think we really helped to educate a lot of residents about the zone 0, zone 1. So that was really, really fun. Thank you.
Julie, was Sophia Porter there who we're
Yeah,
funding through?
she was
Yep,
on,
she was there.
she was on TV actually, and on the radio. Yeah, she did a great job. She was there all day
All
Friday,
day long.
all day Saturday.
And she's in our audience, so thank you, Sophia.
Yeah, she knocked it out of the park when she was interviewed. So it was wonderful.
Nice. Okay, let's see. Any other discussion here, questions for Mark? Let's move on to the consent calendar, please. Item number 6. Thanks, Mark, by the way. Great report. So the opportunity for public comment on the consent calendar items will occur prior to the committee's discussion of the consent calendar. The committee may approve the entire content of the calendar with one action, and the alternative items on the consent calendar may be removed by any committee or staff member for separate discussion and vote. First, we'll take public comment on the consent calendar, please.
At this time, is there anyone wishing to speak regarding the minutes for the consent calendar? Please raise your hand. I see none at this time.
Okay, back to the committee. Any committee members wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion, please, to approve the consent calendar.
I'll make a motion to
Approve.
approve.
Thank you, Julie and Rachel. Second. Thanks very much. Lori, please.
Yes. Member Kurtz,
Yes.
Member McMillan,
Aye.
Member McGinty,
Aye.
Member Rodani,
Aye.
Member Gordon.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Let's move on to item 7, which is the COC report. So there's Lucy. And Lucy was there, by the way, at Amber Stomp representing, I think it was Fire Safe Marin, and she did a fantastic job. And you're muted, Lucy, but Lucy was there and did a fantastic job. So welcome, Lucy.
Hi, everybody. Just to let you know, I was representing Firewise communities.
Oh, thank you.
And we captured a lot of visitors' emails, and so that we could help them organize should they wish to. So that was another way we got IDs on people who attended. My main piece of information for you all is that the COC has completed and approved its report. And it is currently being produced into a publishable document that we hope to have up on the web. We had, I think we wanted to have it on the board's agenda for June, but understanding from Mark that there's a great deal that's going to be looked at for that at that meeting, we decided to hold it off until July. But in the meantime, we are hoping that any of you who have the time might take a look at it. It's a part of the agenda package for the May 25th COC meeting. And it does have some recommendations to which we hope the board will respond. Some of them are sort of very minor suggestions, and others are sort of larger broader issues that we hope you will give some thought to, or the board will give some thought to, and have a discussion about. So that's where the COC is.
And I'll be happy to send a link, a direct link to the full board to the report that was on the COC agenda. It was a publicly messaged meeting though, and attended.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy, and thank you, Mark. Any questions from the committee for Lucy? Julie, please.
Hi, Lucy. I'm just wondering how long the report is. A little preview.
It's 27 pages,
Oh, my
but
goodness.
it's clearly marked so that, you know, there's a sort of overview section, there's the work plan section, and then there's the recommendation section at the end. So you could skip to that. It's also, when it's being produced, we've seen the mock-up, and I think it's much more visually attractive, and you're able to sort of see what you're interested in, what and what not. And it's got images, which this is just a very long, dry, text-heavy document. But,
Great, thank you. I know that was a ton of work for so many of you, so thank you. I'm looking forward to reading it.
good, thank you.
As am I, Lucy. Thanks very much. Sashi, please.
Thanks, Lucy. Is there anything that you can share about what you learned about the process where, you know, you would have wanted to have more support, or would have wanted to make sure that, you know, the members had, you know, skills that you were lacking? Is there anything that you can kind of share with us on lessons learned from that?
Yeah, there were a number of lessons learned. One of which is we had to figure out what exactly we were looking for and what kind of information we would need to support our analysis. I think that one of our recommendations is that we get reports from both, mainly from the local agencies, so that we can determine actual expenditures. And so we're looking at reporting and accounting issues. The other problem that we encountered was that we were taking so long to produce the document that it was becoming ancient history, and it gets harder and harder to reconstruct decisions and thought processes, especially if they weren't in public meetings. So that what we're trying to do now is set up a schedule that we make sure that we're sort of meshing with the work cycle as it goes through the agency, that so we aren't going back and reconstructing a lot of information.
Sorry, Lucy, did you say there were some decisions you were trying to reconstruct that weren't at public meetings?
Oh, well, you know, just sort of was a project was delayed, and was it going to be completed, or is it sort of in suspense? You know, that's the sort of thing that doesn't get reported back necessarily. So if we were following through, a work plan project was proposed, we would wanted to check to see if it was completed and if it was completed within budget. So that was the kind of information that was hard to track sometimes.
And just to put a little finer detail, that was on the local mitigation or the defensible space projects, not the core projects.
Yes, the core projects were very apparent, very easy to track. It was the local agencies that made it harder to read.
Thanks, Sashi. Great question. And Lucy, for all your work. Any other questions from the committee? Let's move out to the public, please, for any comments on this item. Lori?
Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item? Please raise your hand. I see no comments. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Lucy. We look forward to the report and wish we could accommodate you, but we just have a really, and you and I talked about this at Ember Stomp. We are looking forward to your report. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Sashi?
Yes, so if Mark is planning on sending the report to the full board, then that means it's a public, it's public. So I would recommend that we put it on the consent calendar, noting that it would be reviewed by the board in a full item in the following month. We typically do that on the city council when there's something that's got a lot of heft to it, so people have a couple of months to review it, and then you have the but it's known that there's not meant to be comment on it at the time. So that would be my recommendation. If you're going to be sending it out to the board anyway, that means that you have to make it public anyway. So I would recommend that you just put it on consent that way for this month.
Yeah, I appreciate that. and I'll lean on Megan a little because I'll be sending the link to the public, the meeting that was the COC meeting that had that item. So it already is in public record. But Megan, how best to address this?
Yeah, I think that maybe, Sashi, what you're contemplating is once the document is finalized, if it is finalized in that sort of published format, if that was sent out to the full board, then you're right, we would need to have that potentially on the consent agenda so that that would be available to anyone who'd be interested, or at the very least, just on the website available to everyone. But I don't know that that will happen in time for the.
Okay, so there's like a rough draft is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, and then this is something, the COC is its own thing. So the board anyway is just, there's no action for the board to take anyway, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So Julie and then Lucy, please.
I guess I would feel more comfortable having it in the information items section rather than on the consent until we actually review it in July.
Here we go.
I think that might be a better spot for it.
Okay, thanks for the suggestion, Julie. Megan, you concur with that?
That sounds fine. Yeah, because there's usually not public comment on that section and not a big discussion. So I think that's a great way to alert everyone to it being there, but not have it be the subject of a discussion that day.
And that would achieve what Sashi's intended here, is to get it out to the public in advance. So thanks. Lucy, please.
Well, I was just going to confirm that we were hoping that it's not just that you acknowledge that you received it, but that there will be some substantive discussion of the issues. But that's for another day.
Yes, yeah, yes.
Then Megan, can I ask a question about that? If so the report is what it is, but Lucy's mentioning the recommendations that are in it. Would you see that as being something that would have to be agendized separately for discussion, contemplation of the recommendations?
Yeah, I think that that's envisioned for July. So a more,
Right.
if it's on the information items for June, if the report's ready to go, that can be just an information item that's not given a lot of discussion at that meeting, but it's just alerting the board to the fact that the report is there. But then the recommendations and everything else will be considered as a full discussion item or potentially action item at the following meeting.
So that was what that was kind of what I was asking. So I asked you, does the board have to take action? And you said no, there isn't any action. But I guess what maybe I should have been more clear in my question is, so we don't have to approve the report, but if there are recommendations in the report, the intention is that those would be discussed and we would decide whether to take action in the July meeting. Is that correct?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
I think we're on the same page. I just wasn't sure if that publishable report would be ready for the information item section for the board meeting, but if it is, we're set.
But the recommendations will be the same. So this would give us, using Julie's suggestion, a couple of months to contemplate the recommendations.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Great. Okay. Any other comment from the board? Question from the board? Let's go out to the public, please.
Is there anyone wishing to speak on this item in the public? Please raise your hand.
Didn't we just, I think we did that. And then we just did, this was the deliberation.
Oh,
we
I'm
not?
sorry. Bruce,
I'm sorry.
did we
We
went
actually-
out to public?
We actually
already?
did public comment twice, so
Okay,
we're
so yeah,
covered.
so Sasha, you caught me unexpectedly
Thank you, Sasha.
commenting afterwards. So we cycled back. So thank you. So no
Yeah.
need for any further discussion on this. Let's move on to item 8A, Mark, the ESP best practices document. Looking forward to this.
And it'll be presenting this.
Oh,
this
okay.
item.
Oh, sorry. Welcome, Ann.
Hello, if I can share my screen, that'd be great.
You're good.
Thanks. Okay, can everyone see this first slide?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to provide an overview in terms of the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership, how it got started, what this document is that has been presented to the MWPA, and what our process has been in terms of reviewing it. The concept for the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership really began before there was an MWPA. Certain folks who were involved in the campaign and the planning for Measure C began reaching out to leaders in the environmental community. And some of those people include Chief Weber, Chief Tyler, Todd Lando, and others. And this was a really new and innovative way of engaging the environmental community before Measure C even passed, to start addressing concerns earlier rather than reacting to concerns later. So environmental leaders were brought together and invited to create guidance for MWPA activities. And environmental representatives met regularly for 2 years to agree upon and draft a set of best practices for the MWPA. And those best practices are related to vegetation management in wildlands, defensible space, and carbon management. In May of 2021, the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership Steering Committee delivered a draft document to the MWPA, and staff and legal counsel reviewed, as well as our CEQA legal attorney and our environmental consultants. So during this review process, we really focused on certain aspects of the document. We wanted to check and see if the document and the best practices and kind of all the downstream implications of all of this, of all these recommendations were consistent with Measure C, and in particular, allowable expenditures under Measure C, as well as environmental laws and regulations, existing environmental compliance, kind of industry best practices, and our own internal processes and procedures that we have been developing over the last year. And feasibility, are these asks actually feasible to implement? And the idea here was really to leave as much of the document intact as possible, really out of respect for that 2-year-long process that was undertaken, a huge collaborative effort within the environmental community, and only modify the language that was inconsistent with those criteria that I mentioned earlier. So we wanted to ensure that the document included some flexibility for how we incorporated all of these recommendations. That was a big focus of our review and some of the language that we added as well. So the process after we reviewed with our legal counsel and staff and our environmental consultants, I shared this document with the Advisory Technical Committee starting in January of this year to begin their review and give plenty of time for commenting and any further concerns. We held discussions on this document starting in January and then again in February and April, and went through 2 rounds of edits. The ATC really voted on April 28th to move the document to the Operations Committee. And the Operations Committee heard a summary and recommendation on May 3rd and voted to move the document to the board for consideration. And you may recall that throughout this whole process, I've been providing very brief updates in my staff reports and verbal reports just to keep you up to date on the process. So just very briefly, some of the overall edits that we incorporated into the document included adding clarifying language that the document is for guidance purposes and it's not legally binding. Clarifying that staff gets to determine when and to what extent we incorporate that guidance. Clarifying that we as the MWPA we're already complying with CEQA and other environmental laws and regulations. And then adding clarity that residents should defer to their local fire agency, fire code, defensible space inspection reports, et cetera, for very specific guidance on defensible space activities. So I'd also like to read one very short paragraph to you. And this is on page 4, and it says, MWPA's projects will comply with the California Environmental Quality Act and other state, federal, and local regulations, and with the language of Measure C, which requires that MWPA actions be conducted with the ultimate goal of fire protection and prevention. In addition, MWPA intends to implement these practices to the greatest extent possible. MWPA staff will continue to seek input from representatives of ESP and other environmental stakeholders. Because of widely varying conditions and circumstances, flexibility may be needed when applying the practices in specific instances. MWPA board, staff, consultants, and legal counsel will determine how best to incorporate these practices into individual projects. So without diving into the document in too much detail, because you have the document already, just very briefly, the document includes an introduction, kind of an overview of the purpose of the document, intended audiences, clarifies the role of the document as guidance rather than a legal requirement, dives into vegetation management in wildlands, especially how to consider native plants, wildlife habitat when designing, planning, and implementing projects, how to consider potential for introduction of invasive non-native plants, certainly a concern for both the environmental community and the fire community. And it refers to the Cal VTP and other sources for additional guidance. Additionally, there's a section on carbon management, and this is really about managing vegetation to improve carbon sequestration and then considering the carbon cycle when planning for biomass disposal. There's also a section on defensible space, and that includes a lot of different guidance, but in particular, choosing plants wisely, so encouraging use of native plants where that's appropriate, avoiding invasive ornamental plants, maintaining vegetation appropriately around your home, especially starting at the house and moving out, and considering wildlife habitat, nesting birds, and other things while you're doing that vegetation management around your home. It provides resources for additional information, references UC Marin Master Gardeners, Fire Safe Marin, and other resources, and includes kind of a reminder to refer to your defensible space inspections and other guidance from your local districts. So in short, some of these take-home messages that I wanted to emphasize here are, this guidance document really represents an innovative and proactive approach to engaging with the environmental community that builds trust over the long term. We're really excited about the process. We think it represents a big success. But at the same time, the document is really about guidance and it's not legally binding. It doesn't add additional process time to our environmental compliance process. And it's really built to be consistent with our existing project design and implementation features and existing environmental law. So I want to just end with a big thank you to our ESP representatives and especially the steering committee who worked with us really, really closely to finalize the draft that you see in your board packet. In particular, Mike Swayze worked really hard on this before he moved to Nevada Fire. Larry Minikis, Bill Carney, and Bell Cole were really critical to this process. So I just want to end with it was a really great experience, I think, getting to know what the environmental community's concerns were and really getting to know those intimately. And then in turn, those representatives that I was working with really got to know what our concerns were as well. And so it built a better understanding between us. And I think a good pathway for future collaboration. And that's it.
Thanks, Anne. This is, and I too want to thank the staff that did this amazing body of work. Groundbreaking, really. Rachel, please, and then Sashi.
Yeah, it's a lot of, thank you. And to everyone who worked on this document, there's so much in here. A couple of questions. Do you feel that it is now a completed document, or is this going to be updated as information changes along the way? So is there an updating frequency is sort of my first question. And then is there I'm assuming the audience, I believe that what I understood, the audience is really MWPA in terms of the document. And is there an actual like a checklist or something tangible that comes from this work And I know that it's guidance and not legally binding, but I'm wondering if there's really an artifact that comes with it as part of the end product.
Yeah, thanks for those questions. I think the intention was that it was going to be a living document that could be modified as needed as we go forward. We don't have a set schedule for that, but that's something through continued collaboration that we can discuss. In terms of audience, yeah, I think the MWPA and our member agencies, the defensible space inspectors are some of the intended audiences. There is a figure in the document that lists some of the intended audience that you can refer to. I think some of the ecologically sound practices and some of the considerations might be good additional content for some of the defensible space inspector trainings. I think that's something that the ESP has been talking about. And so I think that we can explore that together.
And also the question about the checklist, Anne.
Yeah, I don't have a checklist or an additional work product from this process, but we could talk about what that might look like.
But if I may add in the manual that Panorama is building for ourselves and the member agencies had the recommendations from this document built into it. So to me, there is a form of a checklist captured in that document.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I'll expand on that. So we've been developing, we being myself and Panorama and Sequoia have been developing a manual of our environmental compliance practices over the last year. And we're just about ready to roll that out ahead of or along with the new fiscal year and this next kind of suite of projects that will be implemented. And that manual will include, everything from templates for environmental compliance documents to guidance on environmental best practices, including the ESP document.
Right. Sounds like it's good training material for, like you said, the defensible space inspectors. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And if I may add, and your response as far as the update question, the carbon management, biomass utilization management question is a big one. And Marin has, the Governor's Office of Planning and Research has granted us $500,000 to take a look at, characterize the biomass, not just from our wildfire mitigation work, but also the green waste that moves here in Marin in partnership with the urban and agricultural community. We're actually going to take a look at a snapshot of what we have, what our management plans are, what we're going to move, where it's currently going, where it might go to be more carbon beneficial, more beneficial to the climate. And that will inform our discussions in the future. Of course, it too would be advisory to MWPA, but Bell knows all about this. We're on the core team for the biomass study. But yet, living document indeed. Yes, absolutely. I think we're going to move this along. As we get smarter, we'll make it smarter and better information. So let's see. Belle, you just held your hand up. So if you wanted to respond to that, but we have Sashi and Julie also. Did you want to respond specifically to what I just said?
I wanted to add one more point, which is one of the goals of the ESP as we move forward is updating as we, in response to Rachel Kurtz's question, that continues to be of great importance. And so we have a subcommittee that is working on that. And I just thought fitting in with what Anne talked about and what Bruce talked about. So I just wanted to reassure you that is part of our process.
Okay, thanks, Belle. So Rachel, your hand is still up. You're good? Okay, thanks, Belle. Thanks, Rachel. Sashi, and then Julie, please.
I'm a little confused. I feel like we're mixing up a couple of things here. I've always really been excited and loved that Anne is engaging with the ESP, who are essentially one of our most engaged kind of members of the public. They are members of the public. They have a certain interest, and it's a model that I've been talking a lot with my partners that I'm working with in Sonoma about duplicating that type of partnership. But what I'm confused about is that Anne just talked about the staff work and the consultant work that we've got, to put together an environmental practices manual, and yet we are being asked as a board to kind of take policy input from a member of the members of the public, and to accept this in some way. And I hear that you've made a big point around this is guidance, but the way that this is framed up is staff worked to put this together. It was approved by council. There's legal language in there. We're being asked to vote on it. This is very much being framed up as a policy, a set of policies that we are voting on. Is that the intention here, or is this just if it's something where staff has been working with active members of the public and engaging them in our processes? I'm very much continue to be very supportive of that. But Megan, can you kind of speak to what the intention of having a document that the board votes on, that has policies in it, and that has, to Rachel's point, there's wildfire science is not settled. There's new research and information coming out all the time. I wouldn't want us to be tied into policy decisions without the board having the discretion and staff having the discretion. And I hear you that there's language in there, but you're setting this up like a contract. Like, Megan, can you explain that?
Correct.
I actually don't feel that it's setting anything up as a contract at all. It's sort of a guidance document that has best practices listed and available for use at staff and consultants' discretion. Some of those are very clearly already used practices and would be used by most of them are. Right. So those are being included in the manual that Anne mentioned, and will be encouraged and consistently used, including references to the CalVTP, that type of other document that we're reliant on in a more formal way. But this one this is not that. This is a guidance document that we can use as staff feels it's appropriate. And I think the time spent by ESP to put the document together, they drafted the document. It was really staff taking it and saying, we appreciate this, and we will look through what you've said, what you've put here, to make it more constructive for these practices to actually be used at our discretion again by the MWPA. We need you to also be aware that the MWPA is restricted by Measure C and by its obligations under CEQA and all of those things. So the dialogue was primarily about that, so that everyone would understand, what the use of these practices is based on, and that it comes at the discretion of I see it as sort of a useful secondary source, or a useful guidance document that you can refer to in developing projects and seeing, okay, well, this is what we've looked at in detail, what the expert, this group of concerned citizens and experts has suggested, and keeping it there as a toolbox, but not one that we're required to use every tool in for every project, or even required to use at all.
So why are we voting on it?
This is actually, that's sort of the phrasing of this was for consideration by the executive committee to offer additional comments if there were additional things you wanted to see in the document that you didn't, or if there were things that you thought would be useful for ESP to work on or focus on beyond what's already in there. And then
but the board is going to vote on it. That's my question. Why is the board voting on it?
So it's for board consideration. That was actually something we were going to get your input on. The operations and ATC, I believe, did say for adoption by the board as a guidance document. And that very well may be something that the action that's taken, if you have concerns about an adoption of the document, then that would be.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about that in deliberations, but the staff report didn't even tell us that there was this other document that's being put together that we're paying for. So I think that's an important context. I'll just leave the rest for during the deliberations, but thank you.
Okay, and I may address that slightly. The manual has been, I know, discussed since we first started working on our environmental documents
but not in the context of this conversation.
With the ESP, right? You're right. I don't know that we've mentioned that those practices would inform the manual, but there are practices, again, that would have been in there with or without the ESP document, but maybe were brought to light by the ESP document. So just I think that the communication maybe has been that the manual was happening, but I don't know that the connection was drawn specifically.
Okay, let's move on. Julie, please.
So I really want to commend everyone for participating in this exercise. And I think the substance is great, but I think the process is probably more important than the substance to bring the parties together and build trust before big problems arise. So I just have 4 quick questions. Did Remy Moose and Manley review this document?
Yes.
Yes, they did.
Great. And I assume that we have been following everything that's in here, so it's not going to change any of our practices going forward. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Okay. On page 5, number 2, it's talking about long-term maintenance, and I just had a question about whether that raises any kind of a cumulative impact issue.
Well, long-term maintenance was a big topic of conversation actually between us and ESP partners because we didn't want to commit to activities that are beyond the scope of Measure C and beyond the scope of what's required. And so we've been really careful about that language, and I think there are going to be additional conversations about what like monitoring and maintenance will take place in the future. Because our projects are, we're building in maintenance activities into all of our environmental compliance, we're assuming that once we put boots on the ground and do work in vegetation management work, we are committing to maintaining it long term. So maintenance of project areas is really critical. And the maintenance and monitoring was a big topic of conversation and a lot of edits.
I want to address that question about cumulative question. We had those discussions about 1.5 years ago with them, specifically that, but two concepts here, one of which is the work that we're doing. We consider it infrastructure. You know, like you put in a road, you need to maintain the road. You put in a sidewalk, you need to. So that's what we're doing, and there is a footprint associated with that. And RMM was very clear that maintaining that infrastructure is not. It's not a bigger footprint. It's in essence just an affirmation of the footprint and maintaining it and the effect that is the outcome, maintaining the desired outcome, Julie. So we needn't worry about cumulative impacts associated with that.
Okay, good. And then my last question, we talk about protecting and promoting the health of large trees, and there wasn't any definition of large. So I'm just wondering what people are thinking when they think of a large tree.
I can state a little that there are some dimensions associated with defensible space work up to about 8.5 inches in diameter. I mean, there's some principles and practices that are best practices now for ground and ladder fuels. But yeah, beyond that, anything larger than 8.5 is large, and it says in general, and there may be cases where a few trees might be cut because they're unhealthy, because they're a public threat. They threaten a school or a telephone wire or a power line or a critical communication infrastructure. So it's a great question, Julie, but it's kind of loosey goosey. But you know, any discussion beyond that 8.5 inch, there would be a justification in a prescription associated with that fuels action to justify that it indeed is wildfire prevention and to moderate hazardous fuels. It's a good question.
And is that your understanding too?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, in every project description, we're defining what diameter, what DBH we're treating, et cetera. So we're being very specific about it, and agree that protecting larger trees builds more resiliency into the landscape and into our projects.
Great, thank you. No more questions from me.
Thank you, Julie. Great questions. Dennis, please.
Thank you, Bruce. My question about whether this was a living document has already been answered. Specifically, though, on page 12, we're talking about composted and compost mulch. I was wondering what the thoughts were about identifying 2 for-profit businesses as the source of those, if there's some rationale for that. I'm just a little nervous that we're maybe stepping out of bounds by doing that. If it's the fact that they're the producers, maybe we could just change the language to purchase compost and mulch produced, local producers from local producers or something, and not name specific for-profit businesses. So just a question about that, if there were some other rationale why they were specifically named. So
I'll let Belle or Bruce address that. It wasn't language that we edited.
I don't have the document in front of me. Belle, do you want to?
I just wanted to say that they were. Are you talking about West Marin Compost?
yeah, Redwood Landfill and West Marin Compost.
Yeah, they're doing
specific.
They mentioned them because they are actually doing it. They are the producers, and they seem to be at the moment, and they participated in our process with concepts and
Sure.
data. So
Sure.
they're mentioned because if you to make it more real, to make it more concrete, but not necessary.
No, I just wanted the rationale. They are two of the producers, so it's the production side. I just, when you say purchase from, that sort of sends me a different signal, and it may insult all their other landscape providers, material providers throughout the county who use their material and sell it. So that was my only point. So
thank you.
Great question, Dennis. So Anne, what I'm hearing is and it seems like we're going into, it's a good question. Perhaps we can address that in discussion, but I do think it is something that could be addressed with a little change in wording.
Yeah, be happy to work with Belle on that.
Okay. Let's see. Any other questions from the committee? Let's move to the public, please.
I do see some hands at this time. Larry?
Welcome, Larry.
Good morning, all. I would just like to add, there's a perception that we're 2 separate groups, ESP, but actually ESP has been working within the MWPA. We've been a partner the whole way through this, and this has been a collaborative effort between so many community stakeholders, including scientists and the fire service. Bruce, for example, has been a big part of this. We've had land managers and educational experts involved. So it's more than just a few of us. There's nearly, I think, 100 experts that we brought in over the 2.5 years here to put together this document. And the idea here is that it is a partnership. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Larry. Thanks for your comments. It was a very broad, inclusive entity. And it looks like we have, I see Sophia's hand up. Welcome, Sophia.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. I did just want to follow up on what was raised by Dennis as far as the document. I apologize. I have not reviewed said document at this point in time, but if you all want to kind of interact with me as well, I really want to hone in on the point of not alienating other landscape supply places by just pointing out 2 entities. I mean, those 2 entities have been vetted, and of course we would want to direct attention to them, but I don't want to alienate any of the other ones, especially after constructing a demonstration garden and having so many materials actually donated by somebody that wasn't mentioned in this document, and just want to make sure we're very copacetic with some of our other entities out there and businesses that, forming a partnership, and maybe it's a matter of bridging and educating and getting us all on the same page. So if I can be looped into that offline discussion about maybe changing the language so it's not alienating to those people, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Thanks, Sophia. Thanks for your contributions. Let's see, any other comments, please?
Anybody? Oh, yes, we do have Bill.
One more?
Bill, go ahead. You're allowed to speak right
Welcome,
now.
Bill.
Hi, good morning. This is Bill Carney, and I was on the steering committee, am on the steering committee of the Ecologically Sound Practices Partnership. Yeah, I just wanted to say it's been a great process. It's involved a lot of people, representing a wide swath of Marin. And I wanted to go to Measure C actually to put a context on how this work really got started and what it was trying to accomplish. So I'm quoting now from Measure C itself, or the Joint Powers Agreement, sorry, that led to that. Quote, intensifying climate change and extensive fuel buildup are contributing to the increasing threat of wildfire throughout Marin County, and to the extent possible should be addressed through ecologically sound practices that minimize release of greenhouse gases and protect the biodiversity and resilience of Marin landscapes. So that's the context in which we were working. And I think the document, as it turned out, is a very good fulfillment of that charge. So thank you very much. And thanks a lot for staff and MWPA as a whole in shepherding this process forward.
Yeah, thank you, Bill, for that comment and refreshing our memory that we didn't make this up. It was in the context of the authorizing language explicitly stated, and the team that presented themselves to help define what that set of ecologically sound practices would be in an advisory role is excellent. Thank you, Bill. Any other public comment, please?
Anyone else wishing to speak regarding this item? I see none at this time. Thank you.
Let's come back to the committee for discussion and input to staff and recommendation that be presented to the board for consideration. Sashi, please.
So just I'll be, try to be clear that, I think there are two things that we're doing here. One is an interaction with highly interested members of the public in line with what we, kind of all of us are trying to do, which is to figure out how to, accomplish the fuel reduction goals that we have while having a stewardship mindset, thinking about ways to do land management and with multiple benefits. I think that's something that's really that we can all agree on, and working with members of the public and the ESP group on that is valuable and something that I think we, that I personally support, and I know everybody else does here. So that's one thing here, and that was part of this collaborative process. The second thing is the policy piece of it, which is how this is coming to us. And if it's a matter of, hey, this group did this wonderful, coming together of experts and thinking and pulled together this information, and this information has been shared with staff. It's now being shared with you, board. That group will continue to to refine and work on that as an informational item. I think that is that's appropriate. What I don't think is appropriate is that we treat it as if it's a staff report, as if it's a policy document that we are agreeing to, even if it's if it's watered down with some language around that. The mechanism that we're setting up sets up an expectation that we will abide by this, and that we will, that the board has considered it, our legal counsel has considered it, our special counsel has considered it, staff has been working on it. There would be a very strong case for the fact that we are, as a board, agreeing to abide by this. And so this, to me, that is very worrisome, and is I would highly recommend that we don't do it that way. I would recommend that this come to the board as an information item, and that we celebrate the partnership and that we celebrate the relationships that have been built and that are going to continue to be built, and that we do not treat this as a policy that we are voting on, especially given that we are going to have a competing document that staff is putting together with our consultants that we are paying for. So that, you know, that will have some information that could be, there could be some interpretation where something is not the same, you know, where some language is slightly different than the other. And now we have set ourselves up to have two different documents that where some expectations won't be quite aligned. There, you know, and there are also interpretations of these things. You know, we talked about, you know, definition of large trees, you know, maintaining an extensive canopy was in there. That's something that I have a little concern about, that, you know, that term and what people will interpret that to mean. So my recommendation from our point of view as an executive committee would be that we recommend that this go to the board as an informational item, just as we, you know, the Citizens Oversight Committee report is going to be an informational item. This should also be an informational item. I would highly, strongly, vehemently recommend that we do not vote on this as a board.
Thanks, Sashi. Other board members? Dennis, please.
Yeah, thank you. So I think today we're being asked to provide input to staff and recommend that it be presented to the board of directors for consideration. So that's the executive committee's activity today. As far as going to the board, perhaps Megan can work with Mark. I do think that these kind of reports are accepted as a report and voted on very commonly, at least at the Board of Supervisors, recognizing it as a guidance report. And so perhaps the acceptance of the report could be a way that we could adopt it, so to speak, or accept it rather, and have a vote and still have it be substantial part of MWPA, because I think it is. I think Bill Carney specifically hit the nail on the head about this is a group of people that are well recognized in the environmental community, working with some of our staff and other partners that have put this document together. I think it's a best management document. It really is something that we probably will endorse as we move forward with projects, along with many other documents that are part of how we do work every day. So I think it is important for me anyway. I think looking at the list of names of people on this list who have totally supported Measure C from the get-go, the intent, I think, was that this group would be active in MWPA. They are individuals that represent a broader community, I believe, in Marin that want this to happen and want it to happen in a way that is ecologically sound. And so I think for those reasons, figuring out a way that the board could take a formal action, and maybe that's in the form of accepting the report with a formal vote, allowing staff to use it as they see fit at that point. That's my suggestion anyway.
Thanks, Dennis. Very well reasoned. I really appreciate it. And I'm seeing some head shaking here. Rachel, please.
I'd like to concur with Dennis's statement. I do think I see this as a guidance report. I see it accompanying so much more work that we're doing, and I feel that the language built into the report, it's very clear the role that this report provides. So I think it's really acknowledging the amount, I mean, the fact that this report and the people working on it started before Measure C actually passed, was ahead of the game. So now we have all the formality also in place, but I think this really provides a foundational document for us.
Thank you, Rachel. Julie, please.
Yeah, I agree with Dennis and Rachel. And you know, I don't think this document is going to change the way MWPA and its consultants have been operating. It's just kind of icing on the cake.
Thanks, Julie. I will speak. Also, I agree with Dennis and the other directors that we consider adopting this as a guidance report. Content-wise, it is, in essence, it is an inventory of contemporary best practices. This is best available science, best practices. This comes from master gardeners, from University of California, from CAL FIRE. This is a compendium of best practices, and that was the intent in the original discussions in forming this document. The 70 or so people that came together, that was the intent. It was just to pull together what are those environmental best practices, and the fact then that it has been reviewed by our legal staff, by Megan and team, basically feeling a great level of comfort with that, to bring this to the full board, accept as a guidance document, consider a living document, and move forward. So there's no motion required at this point in time. I think we have a preponderance of support and moving this forward. So we're not voting on accepting this. We're in essence they're stating that we want to bring this forward to the board and have a broader discussion. So that's I think where we are at this point. I'd really like to move on then. Thank you, Sashi, for your questions and comments. Duly noted. I think the board, the executive committee has spoken. So I would like to move on, please, unless is there something we're missing? Mark, Ann, Megan?
I think we're good.
Okay, thanks. Let's go on to item 9, Marin Map membership. Mark, please.
Yeah, good morning again. So Marin Map has already been a great partner for us, and they've already added some layers for us. They have added the boundaries of the MWPA, our jurisdictional areas. They've added the parcel level risk assessment layer, and also the CalVTP treatable landscape layer for us. And I gave a demonstration almost a year and a half ago, probably, on using and accessing those layers. One thing about Marin Map is that they are well known throughout the GIS industry for the quality of their data, and they're held as a standard that other people should follow as far as the quality of their data. They're also a trusted source for the public. Many of the public already are used to going to Marin Map for its data. And then we identified it as a potential host for evacuation, ingress, egress risk assessment through the Esri GeoPlanner platform. The good news is that Marin Map already has Esri licenses. And if we use that as our platform, actually many of our personnel within our member agencies wouldn't need an Esri license to be able to do the work that the ingress egress risk assessment will require. They'll be able to do it simply through the portal of Marin Map as a member agency without the license. And then what's important about being a member of Marin Map versus a non-member is that it allows you access behind the firewall, and it keeps our sensitive data outside of the public side of Marin Map. And so as we develop the packet and the study, and then we use that study to develop projects, it'll be done in a secure environment. We had estimated $25,000 a year for hosting for the evacuation, ingress, egress risk assessment, and membership for Marin Map is $10,000. And so right there, we will realize a savings just for the evacuation, ingress, egress risk assessment, let alone what we anticipate to continue to use Marin Map for. And one of the things that we're excited about doing that is expressing our projects and our work plan on Marin Map rather than on an independent platform that we have been using. It'll streamline the development of the work plan. It'll streamline the display to the public. And then it also makes it readily transferable to Panorama as they work on the compliance pack work, and transferable to OneTAM's Forest Health tool, which we plan on partnering with OneTAM for a regional prioritization plan in conjunction with the Regional Fire and Forest Capacity Program. So to me, there's just a lot of benefits in becoming a member of Marin Map. Another benefit would be put the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority on the steering committee and the executive committee for Marin Map, and help guide some of the decisions to support the type of work that we're looking for. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thanks, Mark. Board members? Rachel, please.
Mark, I was trying to find out with Marin Maps and Zone Haven, because Zone Haven's also another mapping tool. And I'm wondering what the county's seeing as the system of record for maps. Is it, because we're using Zone Haven a lot, they do mapping, Marin Maps, Google Maps. It goes on and on and on. So which is the system of record that we should be using?
So for evacuation, Zone Haven is the evacuation management platform, but for information such as parcel data, LAFCO boundaries, so on and so forth, Marin Map is the map of record.
Okay. And in terms of working with Marin Maps, if we want to put layers on it for Marin Map, who would we use as a developer to actually complete that work?
Actually, Marin Map would be doing it as part of
Okay.
our membership.
So within the county.
Within the contract that Marin Map has within county government, but also our member, they would create the framework and work with us to create the data that goes into that layer. So each of our member agencies would be creating data, but they create the framework to accept that data. And we would also be able to tap into their expertise to support us in creating those layers, the data in the layers.
Right. Have we already tried to pilot a little bit without doing a full subscription?
No, we haven't. But it's to be able to get the access and to be able to, I can ask them, but to, get behind the firewall aspect. I know many of our member agencies are already members of Marin Map and have had access behind the firewall. Back in my county fire days, I would do stuff in there. So I know the process. It works.
The reason I'm asking is because I use Marin Maps to try to outline our neighborhood response groups for Central Marin. And I did run into some issues, not due to the map, but due to our level of customization that we wanted to do. And so also in terms of how just general usability of it was a little bit more than what my group could actually absorb. So I want to make sure that it's the right tool, because it's not the right tool for us at that time, that it's the right tool for what you need. So I maybe suggest
a little bit of a memory jogger you just gave me. Actually, for our current work plan, Nevada Fire was using Marin Map through their member agency access to develop projects within that. And then we transferred it over out of that platform into Panorama. So we have actually beta tested to an extent.
Perfect. Great. As long as it's for what you need and it works, that makes sense. Great. Thank you.
I forgot about the Nevada Fire part. So thank you, Nevada.
Thank you, Bill Tyler. Board members, any other questions about this item from the committee? Let's go out to the public, please. Lori?
At this time, is there anyone wishing to speak regarding Marin Maps? Please raise your hand. I see nobody at this time.
Okay,
Thank
thanks. Any further discussion from the board? Seeing none. Okay, I do need a roll call vote on a motion, a roll call vote to recommend that the board, on a motion that the board approve membership. Now, I'm a little confused here. We are not approving this ourselves. We have to bring it to the full board. So Megan, can you please help me with this?
Certainly. We are requesting a motion to recommend that the board approve membership.
Okay, thank you. I'm ready.
So moved, Bruce.
I'll second.
Thank you. Thanks, Dennis. Thanks, Julie. Lori, please.
Member McMillan,
Yes.
Member Rodani,
Yes.
Member Goins, or Chair Goins,
Yes.
Member McEntee,
Aye.
Member Cook.
Yes.
Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mark, for all the hard work. And this is really exciting stuff. Really, it's going to help us with our monitoring and some of our tracking what we're doing in partnership with other folks. So let's see, go on to item B, which is the office space at Marin Commons. Mark, you are on again, please.
Yes, and I actually did a small slide deck since there's a lot of data in that staff report. And I don't want to reread it all to you, but I do want to hit the highlights. And first and foremost, I want to point out the Southern Marin Fire District have been phenomenal hosts. We really enjoy working out of there, especially being able to look out the window and see sailboats sail by. And I was mistaken at our board meeting when I said our rent was 7,000 a year. It's actually 14,000 and a little bit more. The 7,000 was before we added the cubicle spaces, and that was just for the one private office, the conference room, and the access to the board chambers, copy room, and break room. When we added the 3 cubicle spaces, that's when we went to the 14,000 per year. But quite frankly, we have outgrown the facility. We're challenged with only one private office. For example, when Anne needs to have a private meeting, whether it's a Zoom meeting or meeting with people, it's really a challenge for her to be able to find a location within the office. You see her moving around trying to find that private location. The board chambers would be work for our COC, our COC, exec, and finance, but it would not be large enough for our larger chambers. And also there's scheduling conflicts for the chambers in a conference room. And then one of the things that's important for us, it's not centrally located to our member agencies or our public. And also there is access to public transportation, but it's not easy access, especially to the smart rail. And currently there are no EV charging stations at the location. However, Southern Marin Fire is open to working with us to add the EV charging stations. So options that we considered: retaining the current office space and using alternate locations for large meetings. Working with Southern Marin Fire to expand the current office space at Liberty Ship Way. It would not be in their suite of offices on the second floor. It would actually be downstairs. But there would not be the space for us to create a large meeting chambers for 17 members. We also looked at entering into a lease for commercial office space in a centralized location, and then using alternate locations, be it the Board of Supervisors, Marin Clean Energy, and in combination with Southern Marin for the smaller meetings, or entering into a lease for the commercial office space with the ability to create our own large office space. And as you know, that is staff's current recommendation. And the reason why is I did a little bit of math and was actually a little bit surprised that we are averaging 51 Brown Act meetings a year. And so without control of our own meeting space, you can imagine how we could run into problems of being able to try to schedule that. And while we've been fully remote this entire time, I do feel that we need to be prepared and we need to get ahead of the process to create an in-person and hybrid meeting space. And then when we looked at the different meeting locations, they were either too small or expensive to use. And, you know, the Board of Supervisors chambers don't have a choice but to charge us for the use of the electronics or that create the hybrid environment that we are looking for. And so at the Marin Commons, we were able to meet those goals of having increased office space, as well as being able to create a meeting space that we have control of. It's centralized for all of our member agencies, and that allows staff to go to our member agencies to work with them easier, and vice versa for our member agencies to come meet with us. It also makes it easier for our members of the public to see us. And I think it does increase our transparency. There is easy access to public transportation, including smart rail and a shuttle between the Civic Center and the Commons. Has a large row of EV chargers. It is ADA compliant and has appropriate size and configured private and cubicle office spaces. And then, like I said, we'll be able to create that large meeting space that is comfortable for the public and for the size of our attendees. And then it really is reasonably priced for commercial real estate at $2 per square foot. When I started pricing out other areas, I was getting mostly in the range of $250 to $275 per square foot. So the office space would be at Suite 345. It would be a shared space. And so that's why it's a license rather than a lease for that space, because it's shared with other, Saris Regis or Regis Saris that manages the property. We would have 6 cubicles, 4 private offices, the shared conference room, kitchenette, and coffee room. We would be at $4,880 per month, and that's compared to $1,198 that we're paying now. So that is a net increase of 400%, but we feel that we have an increase of 400% in space, as well as it'll increase the productivity of our staff. It also will create a hotel and office space for vegetation management specialists from our member agencies as they come to work with our staff, so that we can create more efficiency between our member agencies and our staff, as well as between all of the member agencies, because we are going to ask that each member agency's vegetation management specialist dedicate some time to be with us so we can coordinate and make sure that everybody is pulling a rope in the same way. And we do think it will increase the efficiency and productivity of the MWPA staff. Then for the board and committee meeting space, that's Suite 335, which is immediately next door, 2,351 square feet. So that would be $4,702 a month compared to what we are paying now of $0. So 3 meetings per month though, and that's when we get into outside of our busy season, and that's our work plan development, we have 3 meetings a month. If we were to do them all at the Board of Supervisors chambers, that'd be $4,080. So if we look at 51 meetings per year, all at the Board of Supervisors chambers, it's $69,000 a year compared to our lease payments of $56,000. And I do recommend that we have a single meeting location. And the reason why I do that is I'm worried about confusion. If we have 2 or 3 different sites that we regularly meet at, then people, I almost guarantee you, people will start showing up at the wrong spot for meetings, whether it's committee members, board members, or more importantly to me, members of the public. So this creates a central location for our public and our member agencies, a single site like I talked about. And I got to say, almost as important, we have control of the schedule. With all the meetings that we have, that is going to be really important. And then ease of access for the staff, being able to walk next door compared to getting into a car and driving to another meeting location. Increase greenhouse gases, but also time out of the day for staff's functionality. So the process that we followed, we needed to identify the needs of the MWPA present and future. We did explore multiple alternatives. We identified a solution for recommendation. And then we've been describing the needs and the vision to all levels of MWPA's organization with updates either during the executive officer's report, or a lot of it has been while we were discussing the vegetation management specialist positions. We did include the budgeting as a portion of the 22-23 work plan. It was discussed at 2 advisory technical committee meetings as well as 2 operations committee meetings. Both approved that budget allocation as part of the work plan. And then we brought it to the finance committee both in March as a discussion item, and in May, the finance committee recommended that budget allocation for the full board to approve. And then we presented the work plan and the budget that was inclusive of the rental costs to the board of directors in May. And then our intent is to bring the license and lease agreements to the board of directors at its June meeting. Fiscal impacts, as I've mentioned, we're currently paying $14,000, a little over, for our rental costs. We would be increasing dramatically to $114,000 per year. We added an additional close to 10% for any overages or contingencies that we may need, and that's why we landed on the $125,000. So that is an increase of $110,000, and so that's but that's 0.5% of the MWPA budget. So the recommendation is that the executive committee receive the staff report and provide feedback, and then recommend to the board to approve the lease and license and agreement for the office space at Marin Commons. I'll stop screen share and take any questions.
Mark, thanks for very thorough chronology of the work that has preceded where we currently are and the discussion we had at the previous board meeting. I think there's been some misunderstanding of the depth, the breadth and depth of work that's been done to date on this and the timeliness of this. So board members, please. Sashi.
Thank you. So thanks for breaking it out. So you've got a chunk for office space that's going to be shared, and then you have a chunk for exclusive use of a large meeting space, which I know that at the board meeting somebody brought up would be the least utilized space, but we're going to have it exclusively. Was there ever a question put to the operations committee, which has representatives from all the member agencies, to ask for potential solutions for the meeting issue, seeing as we have 17 member agencies, all of whom are actively trying to share services, share personnel, share trying to make the best and efficient use of public money and not have kind of what was it put to the operations committee, the members? How can the member agencies contribute to use of their facilities, or a way to kind of to have the meeting space part of it dealt with?
It was not as directly as you're putting it, I'll be honest with you, but the need for a large meeting space was discussed. And also not just, and what I failed to mention during my slide deck here, is it's not just for the boards and committees, is that we are also convening many large meetings. For example, the technical advisory team for the evacuation ingress egress risk assessment. We are moving into a hybrid and in-person hybrid type meetings format for those. And we would be able to use this space, which we don't have available for us. And the next week, we're convening a MWPA technology summit. And that's bringing all of our technology providers together, how we can link them up. And I hope to be able to give a full report at the next board meeting. And again, we're having to borrow space for that at Marin County OES. It's going to be, again, a hybrid meeting. So it's not just our board and committee meetings. And then when we did discuss with the operations committee and advisory technical committee, there was an agreement about the struggle of finding a meeting space that we can all meet at. I know that sometimes we would use a meeting space at San Rafael Fire, both at the training tower or at their headquarters. There's been times that we've had to borrow space at Novato Fire. So they all see the need and agree with the need. They were willing to open up their spaces and contribute, but again, it was dependent upon their schedules.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Sashi. Rachel, please.
Sort of aligned to that, Mark, is there an opportunity for non-MWPA groups to use the space? The large conference space, not your office. But.
Absolutely. And I would recommend that for our member agencies, especially for wildfire related, that there would be no charge. That would be a benefit of them being a member agency of the MWPA. But for outside entities that we would like to use it, we definitely could explore rental costs for that. And I believe, Megan, I'll have to lean on you. We would have to make sure that the lease would allow for that.
Because large meeting space is way in demand across Marin.
Thanks.
Yeah, we can definitely bring that up, Mark, when we're in those negotiations.
So Megan, you'll pursue that. Great. Julie, please.
I'm just wondering what the term is on the office space as well as the conference room space.
Great question. I'm sorry I didn't include that. The term currently is 5 years, but Megan and I intend to work with the county and see if we can decrease the term.
Okay, thanks. Dennis, please. Dennis, you're muted.
Hands and mutes here. So Mark, projecting out, do you think this space will fulfill MWPA's needs for almost the length of this this measure for the next 7 to 10 years?
I do. We do have, Ann and I do feel that there is a position or two that we do need to add to the MWPA to become as efficient and productive as we need to. But there would be right now a vacant office as well as 3 vacant cubicles. So I do believe that we have the growth potential.
And with the other partner in the space, if some of their cubicles came up, we would probably be the first to get that option.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Could we ask for that in our lease or our license?
Yeah, I see Megan nodding her head.
Just wrote that down. Right of first refusal just went in. Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
And just to clarify also, right now, both are for 5 years, and we wanted to get clarity on if we extend beyond the 5, if we can sort of lock in the rate rather than have it go to market rate at that point. So we're looking into that term as well.
Okay, great. Again, Mark, thanks for a very thorough report and chronology of what we're doing and why. Any of the board members' questions? Let's go to the public, please, for any comment on this item.
At this time, would anybody like to speak on the Marin's common property? Please raise your hand. I see none at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Back to the committee. Any further discussion? I'm seeing none. Oh, Julie, please.
I just wanted to make the observation that we, because of COVID and everyone working remotely, we've kind of had this windfall benefit of not needing large meeting space. So it's kind of hard to compare the, 2020 to 2022 going forward because it was such a unique circumstance.
Thanks, Julie. Yeah, good observation. So I do need a motion, please. And
Make a motion. What am I motioning?
Identical to the last motion to recommend to the full board.
to
approval.
bring it to
Yes.
the full board for consideration. Rachel, thanks. For
Thank you.
I'll second.
So Rachel, motion, Julie, second. Lori, please.
Sorry, just to clarify, the motion is to recommend the board approve. It's not to bring it to the board. Is that correct? That's what it says in the staff report.
For them to approve, Sasha. Yes, that's correct.
And if I may also, at the last board meeting, the budget was approved without this allocation. So we'd want to also encourage the board to adjust the budget according to that approved amount.
So it is a budget adjustment. It's a clarification of that which isn't currently sitting unattributed to any expenditure.
Yes.
Okay. That was Rachel's motion and Julie's second.
Member Kurt,
Aye.
Member McMillan,
I
Member McEntee.
No.
McEntee. Member Rodani
Aye.
and Chair Goins.
Aye.
Passes 5-0. Thank you.
4-1.
4-1.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sashi, was that a no?
Yes, that was a no.
I'm sorry, it cut out. Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item number 10. Board agendas, board directors gen review. So let's see, Mark, you're on again.
Yeah, I'll kick it off. As you can see, we have a very full agenda, especially in the action items. I think we get to action item F in that agenda. And we've discussed many of the items. What we haven't discussed is the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break will and the Cal VTP project specific analysis will be coming to the board for approval. I'll let Ann touch on that, but before I hand it off to her, let me touch on two other items. And that is we will be voting for our new board officers, both president and vice president. We did receive 2 letters, one each. One letter from Dennis for an intention to run for president, and a letter from Julie McMillan for an intention to run for vice president, contingent upon a successful election on June 7th. So all you Ross members out there, please go vote for it. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. And then we also have the Citizens Oversight Committee to bring a member to replace Max Perret so he can be a council member with Sashi. And so we have received 3 applicants, and we have a committee meeting on June 8th. Sashi's going to provide some written comments based on the packet that we sent her, because she's going to get to go to Stinson Beach with a field trip. So, but we will get Sashi's feedback because we felt it was important to include our Southern Marin board members. We have Sashi, Paul Jeske was invited but was unable to attend. Catherine Hilliard, Claire Molesworth, and Bruce are the committee that'll be reviewing, and they'll make a recommendation to the full board for appointment at the CS at June 16th meeting. And then I'll pass it off to Ann about the great work about that it took to get to the vegetation treatment plan project specific analysis and addendum for the non-treatable landscape of the VTP. Ann?
We can't talk about that, though. We're just talking about the agenda item, right? We can't discuss the actual item.
No, we're not going to discuss the item. We're just going to let you know what's coming forward.
So in June, we'll be considering the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break, the environmental documents for that project, and then approving the project itself. I think that we'll be providing an overview of the project, the findings that we drafted through the process, the environmental compliance process, the potential for environmental impact under the CalVTP program EIR, and giving plenty of context in terms of how this fits into the state's efforts to increase the pace and scale of forest management and other vegetation management for throughout the state. And so the project will be framed in terms of the CalVTP process and how we're fitting into that and how we've coordinated with our partner agencies, CAL FIRE, et cetera. So I won't go into details about the project at this time, but I'm happy to point you to our project webpage, where we've now posted the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break document for you to review. We've done that well ahead and above and beyond of any legal requirements to do so, because this is our first really dive into environmental compliance documents beyond a categorical exemption. Really wanted to give everyone extra time to review this document as well as the public. The legal requirements for posting that document are really just to post it on the CAL FIRE's webpage after board approval. So, and then to file a certain form 15 days ahead of project consideration. And we filed that document back in March. So we're well ahead of schedule in terms of all of our legal requirements. We've gone above and beyond in terms of engaging with the public, both before considering the project and environmental compliance, and then again after. We're hosting future workshops with the public to discuss implementation of the project. And that's it.
Great, thanks, Mark. Thanks, Anne. And for the information, it is posted on the website. It's only 518 pages, so get your reading glasses on. It's a phenomenal piece of work. So thanks, thanks, Anne and Mark. I see Julie, you have your hand up, please.
Yeah, just on that issue, I'm just wondering if the outside law firm would be participating in that agenda item in case there's issues that come up during the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. Sabrina will be attending from Running This Manly.
And if there are people who are challenging what we're doing, is there a specific deadline prior to the board meeting that they need to file or whatever they do?
You know, the environmental process under the CalVTP is really interesting. There is, it's not your usual CEQA lawsuit. It would be a lawsuit about whether or not the project is within the scope of the CalVTP program EIR. There's a deadline. Once we file that notice of determination for this project, there's a 30-day statute of limitations. So there'll be 30 days to file a lawsuit for the project.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Great questions, Julie. And we do want to be prepared as best we can. This is a huge project, and I really appreciate the work that's been done. Any other questions from the committee on the agenda? Let's move out to the public, please, for comment, Lori.
Is there anyone wishing to speak on the upcoming Board of Directors agenda? Please raise your hand. I see none at this time. Thank you.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I noticed on the educational item, Jack Cohen. I'm just wondering who that is.
Sasha, you want to answer that one? You know him. You know a lot about him.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Jack Cohen is one of, he's a phenomenal wildfire researcher, and who's been doing a lot of work in the space of how much space do we need? How much defensible space do we need around homes? So we're going to ask him to touch on that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sasha, I see your hand up, please.
Sorry, I'm trying to mute my dog. Can you just recap what the changes are that we've already discussed that are going to be on the agenda? We talked about moving something, putting the COC report on as an information item. Can we just recap the changes?
Yeah, but so including the, if it gets published in if the final publishment gets done in time, we'll include that as an information item, so that the board has time to review it before it comes to the board back in July to take any action on the any recommendations they may have that's in it. And then I don't believe there were any other changes. I think the consensus was to keep the ESP report as an action item, accepting it rather than adopting it.
Thanks for the question, Sashi. Are you good on that, Sashi?
Yeah, okay, so so the COC report, the draft report that's not pretty and formatted, that would not be included.
If they don't have if they don't have the pretty one done, we'll include the draft. If they have the pretty one done, we'll have it in the information items.
Okay, so it will either the draft
One way or
the-
another, it'll be there.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. So committee, any other discussion? There's no motion required. So thanks very much. Let's move on to informational items. Committee members or staff have information for the committee, please.
Nothing from staff.
No, Mark. Oh, Julie?
I just wanted to thank Mark for attending our Ross disaster preparedness meeting that was done in conjunction with the Marin Center for Independent Living. It was last Wednesday, and Mark did a great job presenting and answering some questions from our residents. Thank you, Mark.
It was a great event, and actually the disaster coordinator from Ross Valley Fire intends to simulate the same event for Fairfax, San Anselmo, and I believe potentially Sleepy Hollow. And I also had the opportunity to connect with Eli from the Marin Center for Independent Living, and he and I have a meeting scheduled to see how the MWPA and the CIL can continue to partner.
I was on the keynote panel at the International Association of Wildland Fire and Climate Conference last week, talking about wildfire and climate policy. It was a really great conference. A lot of it, are the kind of leading researchers and folks whose names you've heard were there. Lots of really great information I'm happy to share with anyone who might be interested.
Great. Okay. No informational items. Future agenda items, please. Sashi.
Yeah, I was realizing we've done, the two people that report to the board are the executive officer and the council, and we've done our annual review of the executive officer, and we haven't done our annual review of our council. So just wanted to put out there that we need to schedule that.
Okay, thanks. Great suggestion. Okay, anything else? Nope. So it's time to adjourn. See you all in the meeting on June 16th. Thanks very much, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Sashi, I hope you feel better.
Yeah.
Thank you.